Shalom and welcome to Zion Flex TV. Be sure to like the video, subscribe, and share the live stream. Become a member of Zion Lex TV and unlock several hidden features and hidden videos. Also, you can donate to Zion Lex TV at Cash App $ZionLex or via PayPal at zionlex@gmail.com. We also have an online academy entitled Learn Torah Hebrew Academy. Visit us on patreon.com/learntorah. Our Gold Tier membership gives you unlimited access to our special event lectures and our special live movie nights. Our Platinum Tier gives you unlimited access to our Torah class, Kabbalah class, Patriarchs and Matriarchs of the Covenant classes, as well as understanding the New Testament via the Oral Tradition class. Our Diamond Tier gives you unlimited access to all of the previous tiers, as well as our most sought-after class, our Biblical Hebrew course. And finally, our highest tier, our Sapphire Tier, gives you unlimited access to all previous tiers, as well as our highly esteemed rabbinical course. Be sure to sign up today and check your tier membership so as to ensure you're getting access to the classes you desire. Thank you for visiting us here at Zion Lex TV, and now back to our current live stream.
All right. Shalom, family. I'm going to ask everybody to please take the video and share it on your social media accounts, your social media handles. That way, as many people as possible can know that we're live. I have the honor this afternoon, may I say, of being joined by a sister that I know for a little bit of time, and I think that this conversation that we're going to have today is going to be in many ways groundbreaking. I am somewhat familiar with her skill set and her expertise when it comes to our culture and our history. And I believe that she is going to fill in a great deal of blanks when it comes to the lack of knowledge that many of us have for what we call Igbo tradition in the form of Omenana. So without any further ado, I'd like to introduce our sister, Shmone Sabrina Samedi. Shalom, Akoti.
Shalom, Aki. I'm so honored to be here and get to share a bit about what I've been learning and researching over the last year and a half or so.
Baruch Hashem. So I'm jumping right to it.
All right.
So if I were a person completely unfamiliar with the Igbo people, forget their culture for a moment, right? Respectfully, if I'm completely unfamiliar with Igbo people, what would you tell me about the Igbo? How would you distinguish them from other indigenous West African tribes and other indigenous Nigerian tribes?
I would say that the Igbo people of Eastern Nigeria are people who are not indigenous to that area, but traveled there from the Levant, and they have a distinct culture from those around them. They have a different food culture, different religion, different marital practices, distinct language, and amongst the people they're around, they face discrimination because of their differences.
Okay.
They're almost they're mocked. They're mocked a lot, but they're very successful in the financial and political sphere. And there's that they're seen as a threat. At the same time, they are under threat.
Okay. So let me also ask you this, right? You say that the Igbo of Eastern Nigeria, and thank you so much for giving us a geological look, so to speak, a geographical look, because many of us, myself included, when we speak of the Igbo, we just say, oh, they're one of the tribes in West Africa and one of the tribes in Nigeria, but we don't know if they're north, south, east, or west. So it does help in this interview, the details that you will give us. Please assume that we know nothing, as you are already doing. So on that note, I now ask you this. There are some tribes in West Africa that believe, in accordance with their tradition, via oral or written, that they may not have originated in the area of West Africa. So I want you to first talk to us about various Igbo traditions that connect them from the Levant. What is the Igbo narrative on them arriving in Nigeria? And could you assess for us a roundabout from their lens when this is happening, right? A chronology, a timeline. When are we seeing Igbo from their own tradition coming into West Africa? And what is their narrative about where they originally come from?
Okay. And I'll preface this by saying any mistakes I make are my own because I'm still a student of
Okay.
Omenana. But I believe between three and they've been in the land between 3 and 5,000 years ago. I know that's a big
Whoa.
window, but
Whoa.
they've been in the land early, so they were probably part of one of our earlier Israelite dispersions.
Okay.
And they're seeking, of course, fertile land. They're seeking freedom. They're seeking a place where they can practice the way Hashem has told them to practice, and eventually ended up in that fertile area that is Eastern Nigeria. There are other tribes. So I'm gonna give you an example. The Luo, for example, of Kenya right now, East Africa. They have a narrative that they came from the east when there was a famine in their area, and they traveled from there to where Igbo land is and back. So when we look at the Bantu migration, when we look at Igbos, they're lumped into this really vast category that people call Bantu, but that is again, that's a European, and Bantu just means people. That's a European concept that's kind of been put on this huge group of people with
Right.
very different cultures. And so the Igbo are lumped historically, if you're going to read about when they travel into this greater Bantu migration. But there are two migrations. So there is one from that central West Africa out, and then there's one from the east in toward central West Africa. And there's also some migrations down to the southwestern corridor of Africa as well. And I brought up the Luo, for example. If you ask a Luo, they'll say that they came from Egypt. They were in what's known as Kenya, and then they traveled to Igbo land and went back. And so you have people of different cultures. Sometimes it's very hard for us to conceive that a people just so casually knows who they are and where they came from.
Come on.
We have been so cut off from our culture. But the best thing to do as an anthropologist is to listen to what people are saying about themselves. You know what I mean? Yes, look at things scientifically. Yes, verify and look at other historical factors and narratives, but believe people when they say where they're from and
Come on.
yeah.
That's right. I appreciate that. I'm a person that I do study African history, and I do have a focus on West African history. So I am somewhat familiar of there being existing traditions and even archaeological evidence, scarce as it may be, that actually display for us that the people of Egypt, due to warfare, due to famine, due to civil and civic rivalry among themselves, due to exploitation by colonist societies such as the Greeks and the Romans, they also begin to make their journey deeper into the interior of Africa, and they make their way into West Africa. And they are to be found among some of the indigenous West African tribes today. They're scattered, they're diffuse. And what I now know through history and through oral tradition is that the Hebrews, the biblical Israelites spoken of in the Bible, due to the same exact reasons, they eventually make their way into heartline Africa and also make their way into parts of West Africa. So, what I want to make clear in this moment is Israelite identity in West Africa is complex. We can't look at an entire country and say everyone there is Israelites. You're going to have a problem. The Igbo know that there's a cultural difference between them and the Yoruba. However, there are some people that believe that there are Yehudim, there are Jews among the Yoruba.
Mhm.
So I want to focus here for a moment and ask you this question, right? Because I know it's a controversial question, but I know that we're mature enough and we care and are compassionate enough to deal with it in a respectful manner. So talk to us for a moment about what you believe or what you know are the cultural differences between the Igbo of Nigeria and the Yoruba, and qualify for us, if you can, why it is that we should look at them differently or why it is that we should see commonality. You decide for us.
All right. Some key distinctions are first their concept of God. The Yoruba have a pantheon of deities that they worship, with one being supreme over others. But there's a pantheon of There's a pantheon of gods. That's number one. Marriage, there's no real official, when you look at the Igbo marriage ceremony process, it's a process. There's nothing that corresponds to that in Yoruba traditions. It's more like I choose a wife and I choose a woman and we live together and now we are married. You have a tradition of kings amongst the Yoruba, and this is a huge difference. Igbos have retained that attitude toward kings that Hashem gave us, from the beginning. That he permitted it, but it wasn't his will, and so Igbos have a saying: Igbos have no king. It goes on to the same idea of what exists in Creole right now when you say Igbo Gramun. Igbos are self-sufficient people. We're not ruled by kings, and we don't bow before men. And that's a huge distinction because in Yoruba religions, they have kings. It's a very striated hierarchy culturally, and Igbo culture is very egalitarian. It's a lot like what we read, and not a lot. It is what we read in Torah, where you talk about elders and the chiefs among hundreds, 50, 10, and they make decisions together. Everyone, they make decisions for the community together. They make legal and judicial decisions together when aro, sin, is committed in a community. Those are just some of the ones that I'm very familiar with.
Okay. Okay. As a person that is somewhat of a history buff, I'll ask you this question, which may or may not be complex. How would you draw a clear line of distinction between the concept of socialism and what it means to be an egalitarian?
Okay. Um, Egalitarianism is more about people having not being the same, but having this their voice is valued the same, basically. So in Igbo culture, women and men and children and elders have distinct places within the culture, distinct roles, but their voices are equally heard, and their things that concern them are equally considered. When you talk about socialism, it's a disrespect and a disregard for all, or for any like social role or hierarchy, and it's more about people sharing goods like a king. Like, okay, let's say in probably Yoruba culture, you would every the taxes and offerings, etc., are given to a king, and then the king would disperse
Yes.
uh, equally. In Igbo land, women capitalism is, it's part of Hebrew culture. It's a part of Igbo culture. You have market days. The whole culture is built around market days, and women have a huge role in that. The women are the ones who are growing a yam and growing their produce, and they're going to the market to sell, and they have autonomy in that. We see that, and I might be going a little ahead, but there's a historical event, the Igbo Women's Revolt. And that this is a very clear like example of egalitarianism.
Okay.
The British they saw how lucrative the women's businesses were, and the women were kind of like the foundation of that economy. And so they decided they wanted to tax the women on their produce, and the women got together. First, they went to the men, but a lot of them, I think Francis Drew had mentioned warrant chiefs. So you kind of had those who had kind of sold out to the British and were sort of, playing that role, governmental role over their own people. So the women went to them first, and then the move they weren't making moves. So the women by themselves confronted the British, and I believe 60 something women died.
Mm,
They were rebelling against those taxes. And
okay.
the men in the community fully backed them, even though it was the women who, did the confrontation. And that's what I mean. They didn't feel as if they were subjugated, that they couldn't stand up for themselves, but women have distinct roles in society.
All right. I appreciate that. Again, the culture and tradition of West Africa is very complex. And us as African Americans and Afro Caribbeans of the diaspora, we have a very skewed view of what culture means and is throughout West Africa. Many of us act or present as if West African culture is a monolith. And it's not.
Yep.
You can cross the street and see a completely different culture in some parts of West Africa.
Yep.
So Africa alone in general is a very diverse continent. Every gene pool in all of humanity not only can be found in Africa, but many emerge from continental Africa, as we know. So in just understanding that from science, we should understand that as above, so below, just as there are, manifold DNA sequences among indigenous Africans, so are there many cultural and traditional differences. So I don't want our community to believe that what happens in the transatlantic slave trade is that Europeans go and they snatch every African they can find from West Africa and place them on ships forcefully and sell them abroad. And then us reading passages like Deuteronomy 28:68, and we see in that a fulfillment of the transatlantic slave trade, which leads us to say everyone that they captured, regardless of what part of West Africa they were captured from, that must be the Israelites. I think that is a flaw in our thinking. I don't believe that everyone that boarded that ship must be an Israelite, because I don't believe that the people that came to take us were specifically looking for Israelites. They were looking for slave labor. It just so happens that the bulk of the people that they drew from were the ethnic people we know today as the Igbo. The Igbo represent the bulk of the people taken from the transatlantic slave trade. So here is where your expertise comes in, and here's where I fall back and I become a student as I grab for my pen and my pad, which is nearby, right?
Well,
I'm literally going to take notes because I have a question for you, right?
okay.
My question for you now is, can you talk to us about the historical fact or facts about the transatlantic slave trade? Which ethnicities, as far as you know, in West Africa are involved? And as far as you know, qualify or quantify for us which indigenous West African tribe comprised the bulk of slaves or people that were taken and forcefully enslaved?
Well, that's first I want to give a nod to what you said earlier about Igbos being distinct from other tribes around them or other people groups around them. Igbos were known to, even when they were captured, even on the ships, etc., they were known to not want to relate to those who were uncircumcised. So circumcision is one of those other cultural markers that and particularly at the eighth day, because other cultures have that, but not on the 8th day. That's a very distinct Hebraic culture feature. So who was taken? Igbos above and beyond, I would say, were taken in the transatlantic slave trade. You also had Fawn. You had, of course, Yoruba. You had even those from populations, I don't know all the tribal names, but that are in places like Senegal and Mali. You have Benin. You have and Haiti is a good representation of all those, because you'll find all those cultures in Haiti. You have Guinea, you have Benin, Fan, you have Yoruba, you have those tribes in Cameroon, the Bamileke among them. Those are just some off the top of my head that were taken in droves from East Africa. But over and above, I would say, who ended up in the Caribbean in particular are Igbos, because we have to remember that in America, on the mainland of North America, we had more breeding happening. And in the Caribbean, because they were working on sugar plantations that were it was very brutal work. The life expectancy of an enslaved person was about 8 years. So they were continuously bringing, and I'm sorry, I forgot to mention the Ashanti and Ghanaian tribes among those. But in the Caribbean, you had a huge turnover because people were expected to live about 8 years. So that's why you saw so many Igbos being taken, and you saw so many coming into the Caribbean. And you also have Congo and Bakongo from Angola. So it's vast. The tribes and the people groups who are taken, it's vast. But you could say Brazil, for example, have a lot of Angolan, a lot of the populations that are now in Angola. Haiti, for sure, a lot of Igbos, Hispaniola, let me say, the whole island. You have the Ashanti. Some of them, of course, we know are in Jamaica. You have people who identify as Bobo Ashanti and things like that in Nigeria to this date. So yes, but the sugar plantations in particular has such a harsh turnover. And when we read the Black Jacobins, is that's the title, right? I want to make sure I said it. The Black Jacobins, right? You hear about plantation life on the island of Hispaniola and how brutal it was, and the torture methods that the French inflicted on what we now know as Haitians and Dominicans. And it was horrific, and they were just importing people constantly from Igbo.
Okay, I definitely appreciate that. I want to share my screen and have a developed conversation about something a bit, I want to say, random but still related. On the screen is my DNA sample, right? A sample of my DNA showing the regions where I have immediate ancestry. First and foremost, I am 98% African, which I loved seeing, right? I love seeing that. I will admit that.
Right.
It says that 21% of my gene pool can be found in Ivory Coast and Ghana, 19% in Benin and Togo, 18% Nigeria, 16% Mali, 7% Cameroon, 6% Central West Africa, 6% Western Bantu, 4% Senegal, 2% England and Northern Europe. That's my family in the Caribbean, by the way. And 1% Khoisan, aka Mobutu people. So there's a conversation that happens, Sister Shimona, that I'm well aware that many Igbo do not wish to deal in DNA. And that can be a very complex subject because DNA doesn't necessarily tell you exactly your place of origin and your ancestral origin. DNA can be very complex, and the way in which we treat DNA today may not be as culturally and ancestrally accurate as people may think. However, because it is something that we use, I want to ask you a question. Um, how relevant would you say is the usage of DNA to connecting Afro Americans and Afro Caribbeans with their Igbo ancestors? I asked that question because not everyone that boarded that slave ship was an Igbo, as we both know, as we all know. So for Afro Americans and Afro Caribbeans who may not know what their oral traditions are, because either A, their family failed to communicate it, or B, many people weren't even raised by the people that birthed them, how would you say is the best way for an African of the diaspora, whether we are in America or the Caribbeans or in other parts of our diaspora, what would you say is the best way to connect with who we are in continental West Africa, either with DNA or without DNA, and why do you think with or without is good?
Um, I think DNA satisfies the question that most of us have on in the West about our identity. It's good for that. It's good to get a broad overview. But like what you just demonstrated in your own DNA, you have at least 10 different cultures with 10 distinct concepts of God, languages, etc., represented. And so it's very interesting because this brings up a point. Rabbi Walter Isaac talks about um, looking at us as victims of human sex trafficking and understanding that that puts us in a unique place in the world, because not only were we taken, we were force bred and raped. And
Mm,
so it's our prerogative now to assert whichever identity, frankly, that we feel connected to. And yeah, don't feel, and there are many of us in Americas, even within my own family, who have some of them done DNA. One particular person I'm thinking about did not, but he feels more connected to indigenous American roots,
mm.
which we have. I'm sure I have it, so I'm sure he has it as well. But if that's his prerogative, if he feels connected to that. But as far as your walk with the Creator, uh, Hebrew tradition has always been a creolized one. We started out as a mixed multitude. We started out as a multitude of, we had Midianites, we had Egyptians, we had other groups from the very beginning of when we made that covenant with Hashem at Mount Sinai. And so we need to understand that your faith in Hashem does not need to be dependent on what you see on your DNA results. Because this way of life and this way of connecting to the Creator, I could say personally, if it connects with you, if it makes the most sense, then that's what needs to guide you, your faith walk, your religious walk, your walk with your Creator, and how you live in this in this how you live in this right realm anyway. But DNA is a good start for those of us who just have no idea. And it's a good way to reconnect with who you are, learn about these people and see what feels right to you. But don't let that dictate your religion or how you relate to the Most High.
All right, thank you for that. So let's do a word Smith hunt. Um, let's start with the term Igbo. Um, from your studies, where does the term Igbo derive from? Is there an indigenous Igbo word that is compounded to give us Igbo? Where does the term Igbo derive from?
Igbo is directly derived from Ivri, uh, our ancestor Abraham, um, the uh, the Hebrew. It's just another It's just what's the word? It's just another way to express that. Remy Alona told me recently that it was actually a Yoruba historian who coined that spelling of Igbo with the IGBO. So when you
Mm.
see and that may be, if you listen to the Yoruba language, it has that like kind of G. It's like a
Mm.
guttural silent G intonation. So maybe that's how he heard it. And so even a lot of our people names come from how Europeans, how a word we said sounded to a European or sounded to another culture, and that's what got written down, and that's what we stuck in what we call ourselves. But
All
it
right.
comes directly from Ivri. It's directly from our ancestor Abraham.
All right. So the term Igbo then would be cognate in meaning with the term Ivri. So it denotes a Hebrew.
Hebrew.
All
Yeah.
right. The next question I want to ask you is something that I first seen in the writing of Remy Ilona. Um, when an Igbo refers to the Creator, yeah, if they are of the faith of Torah, and I say that because I am aware that there's some Igbo Christians, but if they're of the faith of the Torah, you may hear them say Hashem. But a term that seems to be universal among the Igbo to refer to the Creator is Chukwu. Could you correctly pronounce it if I am mispronouncing it? And can you also define it for us? What is meant by the term Chukwu, and how do you actually really say it?
All right. I want to give you it's pronounced Chi Ukwu, Chukwu.
Okay.
It's Chi and Ukwu.
Okay.
And I want to give you the proper definition of Ukwu. So, and I should know this, but again, I'm still a student.
Okay.
Should know this off the top of my head. But as a matter of fact, I'll come back. I'll come back to it.
Okay.
But
Take your time. Take your time. Take your time.
yeah, it's Chukwu, and it comes from. So again, just recently speaking with Zarabi Alona, he was talking about a Jewish scholar who actually had written about a Jewish historian that the name of Hashem, the Tetragrammaton, is not the original name, and there's a word that is derived from the Egyptian anochi, and that is where that chi comes from. And we know it's a very ancient word because you have this. That's the source, the essence of life, the power of the universe, chi, the creator, the life-giving force. And we see that chi also in Asian cultures, referring to the same life force, power, chi. So that's a very ancient term that the Igbos use for God.
Okay, I appreciate that. Continuing on this wordsmith journey, also define for us a term that is so reoccurring, right? Omenana. But I don't want you to stop there because I'm a reader, right? And as I'm reading various works written by the Igbo, I also see the term omenala. Omenala.
Mhm.
So, what is the difference between omenana and omenala, if there are any differences at all? And what do they distinctly mean?
Okay, first I'll go ahead and answer the Chi question. So Chi is the creator, the life force, and Ukwu means great. So
Okay.
that's what Ukwu is. Um, Omenala is and the difference between Omenana and Omenala is just a pronunciation. Depending on which region you're from, you would say Omenala or Omenana. So that's just a matter of pronunciation there.
Okay.
Omenana means things that you do in the land. Ome, na, Allah, or ana. Ana, Allah is the word for land in Igbo. So that's what
Mm,
you do. This is literally things, ome, na, in, Allah, land. Things you do in the land. And that's found in Deuteronomy 7, thereabouts, when Moshe said, "These are the things that you will do in the land that the Lord is giving you."
Okay. Okay. I love that. I love that. Um, what I was intrigued a great deal by when I first had you on this live stream a week and a half ago was your ability, your uncanny ability to connect various Igbo traditions as they present in Haiti. And I hope I'm pronouncing that accurate. So, can you revisit that once more, but this time just take us a little deeper, right? What, to your understanding and research, are the cultural connections between traditions practiced in Igbo land today and of old, and traditions and culture in Haiti?
Okay. I'll start with voodoo, and I'm making a clear distinction. Vodou, first of all, is the Benin, is the religion of Benin, and even that label was put on the practices that the French saw the Africans in Haiti doing. That label came around the 1600s. So if you speak to a Haitian, they will say that they are that practice voodoo. They'll say they're serviteur, which means I'm someone who serves the law. Um, so when I'm going to voodoo, because this was the means of the Africans who were taken to Haiti of preserving their cultural traditions. So in voodoo, you have a pantheon, and each one you have Guinea, you have some that you have Guinea, you have Igbo, you have others. And so each one that you particularly serve, it's a personal relationship. You're talking to those ancestors, and you're preserving a certain way of life, and it's a certain way that you approach that law when you are praying, etc., and when you're representing it. What's distinct about Igbo, and that is very interesting in Haiti, is that all the other law are associated with it's a syncretic religion, that the African religion synchronized with Catholicism so that it could be practiced without them being persecuted. When you talk about Igbo, however, it's not associated with any saint. They couldn't. The very nature of the Igbo ancestors told the Haitians that there's no association. Igbo Gramun. Igbos are self-sufficient. The
Mm,
representation of Igbo and voodoo is a drum. Um, it's a drum, and it has to do with the beat, the music that was preserved from Igbo land. If you were to listen to the music that's associated with Igbo, if there's a song called Igbo Lele, a it's an old Haitian song, and you hear the flute, and not all of the Loire have that flute associated with this music. I mean, it sounds like when you hear that song, um, it sounds like something that came straight from Igbo land. Um,
mm,
just the saying Igbo Gramoon is a nod to that independent spirit. And generally, when someone is connected to their roots, a Haitian would say Mwense Igbo. Literally, I'm Igbo. Nuse Igbo, Mwense Igbo. The term that you might hear a voodooisant say at the end of a prayer, or if you hear non-Christian Haitians, we get together, we're conversing, etc. What you'll hear them say is Aibobo.
mm,
Aibobo, Aibobo. So in Creole, it's spelled IBO, not IGBO.
mm,
Um, Other traditions that you find, there are voodoo purists that have not synchronized the Catholicism on top of the African tradition. There's a particular young woman that I've been listening to and studying what she's saying. And when she says how you begin a prayer is you're acknowledging the elements, the heavens, the earth. It's just like that when Hashem made the covenant with Abraham and he said, I call the heavens and earth to witness because there's none greater, and that's an eternal witness. The heavens and the earth are eternal witnesses. So you call on the heavens and the earth to witness. You not pray to your ancestors, but you acknowledge your ancestors, and then you invoke your prayers to the Creator, to God, Bon Dieu, in which is God, the good God, which is in Voodoo. In Voodoo, you have that concept of Bon Dieu, which means good God, and that is in distinction. That name was in distinction to the God of the Europeans, who obviously was not a good God.
Right.
So
I want to pause you for a moment, right? Because I'm just thinking right now, my mind is racing. Um, in my family, I have people that identify as being Rastafarian, right? And that can differ, right? You among in my family, you have Rastafarian who are part of what you call 12 tribes, right? These are the Rastafarians that you will see their locks out. But then you have Rastafarians like my dad, which would be like the Bobo Shanti. And these are the Rastafarians who always wear their head in a wrap, right? And they represent in the core essence of their teachings and tradition, they represent the priestly class among the Rastafarians. They're known as the Bobo Shanti, or sometimes just a bridge to the term Bobo. Um, do you see any relative parallel in the term Bobo used among the Rastafarians?
you're just bringing that. Yeah, I'm like, yeah, that's a really good thing to research. Now
Right?
that you say it, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Mm-hmm. Because we
Yeah,
have to remember our ancestors were trying to preserve what they had. We are not all from one tribe, so maybe it was Igbo and Ashanti.
right.
Maybe that was some
It
sort of merging of the cultures.
because some of our cultural expressions is a cultural memory, right? And there are so much traditions among African Americans in the South, Afro Caribbeans of the diaspora, that when you speak to the elders, they say, I don't know why we do this, but this is what we do. And
Mm-hmm.
this is what we've always been doing. I've even encountered some Igbo elders in conversation, and I asked them to give me a root and a branch for what they do. And they say, I can't date it. I can't tell you who first started it, but I can tell you this is what we do. This is what we did. This is what our ancestors have always done, as far as I know.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm getting at is that there's a great part of our cultural expressions which is rooted in what is called historically a cultural memory, right? So
Mm-hmm.
what would you add to that?
Okay, I wanted to point out that you just brought it to my memory. In Jamaican patois, there's a term unu, and
Yes,
that's like
yes.
us, right? It means us,
Uno, the trio uno, yeah, uno,
right?
yeah.
So that's an Igbo word. That's an Igbo word, means the same thing, and you see the cognate in Haitian Creole, where when we say in Igbo, it's umuna. And you're talking
Mm,
about the people, family,
mm,
your people group, umuna. In Creole, you would say munmwe. In Creole, you
mm,
say moon to refer to a person. Mwen se on moon. Tout moun se moon. These are, Haitian saying, tout moun se moon. So if you're, and this is interesting. So if you were to just research, okay, Google or whatever, where does moon come from in Haitian Creole? They say, oh, it's a French word. They took it from the French monde, which means world. But why would we take a French word that refers to the world to refer to an individual.
Come
When
on.
you actually have this Igbo word mun, umuna, that means people in person, and I mean it's a direct cognate. There's no denying that. So and these are some of the things that I hope to bring into the academic world and really just get it on paper and teach.
Okay.
What else? There's the ofo in Haitian voodoo. That's the ofo, which uh now the actual place that a ceremony is held, the whole place is called the honfor or ofo, depending on
Right.
how you pronounce it. So the ofo in Igbo in Omenana is the staff, the rod of Aaron, the staff of authority that signifies that person's spiritual and legacy authority to stand in prayer. And so in Haiti, yeah, the prayers are done in the ofo. In Omenana, you have to be holding the ofo, but there's still retained this concept of a central pole that has to be present. It's a wooden pole whenever a voodoo ceremony is being done. And it's called the potomitan, which is the French term for it, but it can also be called ofo.
Okay.
In Haiti, and those who practice amongst those who are not Christians, you also have polygyny, which is called matlot. So a man would have multiple wives, and the wives would go live in separate homes, and he would be the transient one going to the different homes. Each woman has her own home, and that's how you see that set up in Omenana. Each woman has her household. The man also has his, but and he goes to the various houses, and that's what we see in Torah. You see
Yes,
that between Rachel and Leah, that interchange.
we sure do. So what's fascinating for me about learning Igbo culture is that I do know in various, but not all, in various West African cultures, and I'm just using a vast term, West African, because there's many cultures to be
Mhm.
found and practiced in West Africa. But in various West African cultures, there are an order of kings. But among the Igbo, which is interesting, there is no order of kings.
Mhm.
But there still seems to be a rank and file system, an echelon, as it were, because I heard you use the term Eze and even Enzir, right? So just talk to us about some of the cultural titles held among the Igbo, what they mean, and their relative nature to Hebraic titles like, let's say, rabbi or teacher. More.
Okay. Okay. In the spiritual in the spiritual realm, you have Dibia, that the spiritual functionaries in amongst the Igbo. You have Dibia, and then you have Dibia, and they'd have like a signifier after that to tell you what kind of Dibia it is. So it'd be like a Dibia Afa is someone who does what is it? Not I'm trying to use the correct word. It's a person who discerns, who does discernment. And
Mm,
there's some, and Afa is very similar to the Umim and Thumim concept.
okay.
Um, when you look at the when you look at Afa, it's a series of it's a series of concave and rounded. uh, I don't know if they're shells or whatever they're made of, but they're concave and rounded. And they're, I think they're 12. And they use that to decipher, if you come with a question, to decipher the answer, etc. And when you look at umim and thumim, we know those are plural words in Hebrew. A lot of times we see the representation of umim and thumim and urim and thumim, sorry. And you'll just see one dark stone and one black stone, but both of those are plural.
Mm,
So it kind of gives you the idea that there were probably more than one, and they were kept in the pocket of the priestly garment. But that's one. There's the Nze is like Nzarabi. That's what we call our elders and Omenana defenders, and that's just like saying a chief, an elder.
So Eze is the
Mhm.
chief and elder, but Zarabi.
I think that is a nod to our the role of being like a rabbi. That's what the
Mhm.
rabbi comes from, but it's Nze or Ize.
You know, Sister Shimona, my mind is always racing when I'm hearing things, right? Because there's a Hebrew name found in the Bible, Uzziah, Uzziyahu, Uziel, where the cognate root is Uz, Azah, or Eze. And it denotes someone that is strong. It
Mm,
denotes someone that's a protector. And it only makes sense that this name would develop into being descriptive of someone who is a king. The
a
king is
chief.
the intellectual chieftain of the people. The
Mhm.
king is the protector of the people. I already see a cognate relationship. One of the things that I specialize in when it comes to Hebrew culture is etymology and linguistics. So as I'm listening to you teach us, I'm also doing, a separate word study of my own. So I already see a linguistic relationship between the Hebraic term uz or azah and eze. Yes, it can absolutely denote king even in Hebrew. Absolutely. Even as the term, and this might be a bit controversial, but I'll say it, even the term Ghana. In Rudolph R. Windsor's book, From Babylon to Timbuktu, he writes that the area and region we know today as Ghana, it owes its name to Hebrew. And it was named after its original kings, because the very term Ghana or Ghana'a denotes a king or a series of kings. And I said to myself, well, where is that in the Bible? And I found it in the book of Psalms. The word Ghana denoting a king. In Hebrew, Gan
Mhm.
describes a garden, but more importantly, the protective hedge of a garden. So in the Bible, we speak of the Garden of Eden. In
Mhm.
Hebrew, that's Gan Eden, where the term Gan is a protective hedge surrounding the garden, right? And that's where it gets its name from. So what's interesting now is in biblical Hebrew, the term Gan, yes, it refers to the Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden, the protective hedge, but it's also the Hebrew word for shield, and it's also the Hebrew word for king. So I'm just throwing these ideas out there because it is always the job of the current um, lineage to go back and assess the quality of information that our ancestors gave us, see if there's any corrections to be made, if any at all, and then bring that information into the future now. Um, that idea is represented in some traditions in Africa, and it's known as Sankofa, right? The
Mhm.
idea of looking back and fetching that which is yours and bringing it to your people to make useful, practical use of it, right? So, again, I'm just pointing out that even in biblical Hebrew, I can see a relationship between the term Eze and the term Uzzah, and how even though the term Uz in Hebrew or Uzzah is not necessarily describing someone as a king, there have been several kings that have actually had that name. And we also know that by definition, the king is the intellectual head of the people, and he's also seen as the vanguard of the people, the protector of the people. The people look to the king for protection, just like we look up and pray to the king of the universe for protection, right? So I see a linguistic relationship, but I want you to continue on your train of thought and tell us more about some of these titles that the Igbo hold. You say Eze, you say Zarabi, Eze meaning chief, Zarabi also denoting a chieftain. But I know you mentioned it, but I'm going to ask you one more time. The term Enzir. And am I saying it right? Enzir or is it Nezir?
It's the same word that you're referring to as Nze. It's Nze. So it's just the N sound, nze, and that's what it means, chief. I want to make the distinction because Igbos are so
I'm sorry, Sister Shimona.
Mhm.
How do you pronounce it?
Nze,
Inze. And how would you spell it in English?
NZE.
Okay. Now, was I wrong in seeing the term NZR as a title?
No, you're not. The NZR is I think that R in Zarabi is like a nod to something modern where we're calling our teachers Rabi and Zarabi.
Hmm. I
Hmm.
say that because, we have this term in Hebrew, Nazir, which is the Hebrew term that becomes a Nazarite, right?
Same, yeah,
But what's interesting is in biblical Hebrew, the term Nazir is also the Hebrew word for crown. A crown is worn by a king, a crown is worn by a priest. The oral tradition speaks of the crown of kingship and the crown of priesthood and even the crown of a good name, right? Because they say that a person with a good name, good character traits, is even greater than the king or priest based on our tradition and our motif, right? Our
right.
cultural motif. So I just think it's interesting in going through some of these words that we can see cognates in the Hebrew language, which would to some extent give a historical linguist a reason to say there might be something here, right? Because there's a number of ways, as I know you know, but speaking mostly to the audience, there's a number of ways that a historian and even an anthropologist can trace a person or people's origins. One of those ways is through the archaeological material found in the ground, archaeological relics. One of those ways in modern history is through DNA. Whether or not that's fail safe, we could argue about that, but that's certainly a tool that people use to trace who people are today.
Hmm.
What is not so looked at is the relevance of linguistics and etymology, which in the ancient world played an even greater role in ascertaining who people were. You know what my family says, Sister Shimona?
Hmm.
When we meet people that are from the same village, what's your last name? What's your father's last name? What's your mother's last name? And let me hear the sound. It has always been part and parcel of African culture and tradition to use linguistics to also trace a people's origin. So I think this is extremely important as a part of our conversation to talk about some of the names, descriptions, and titles held by the Igbo and just exactly how they connect with the names that we find in the Bible.
Uh, yeah, to your point, there it linguistics is a branch of anthropology, but this is why we need more of us in that field. Um, you are doing linguistics right now. You don't. You obviously you have the tools of that. It takes the experience, and you're doing linguistics in your the breadth of your work. And as we speak, you're correct in drawing all those connections to the root word that you referenced. The only thing I would say in Omenala is that real distinction uh, between a king and other types of authority. So yes, the Nazarite, that priestly role, that elder, that chief, but king is one that any Igbo would kind of push back on, and that might have, and just in conversations with Zarabi Remy, that might have something to do with the time that the Igbos dispersed. It may have happened when Israel had a wicked king. It may have been one of those dispersals, and why Igbos are so vehemently against kingship. But chieftaincy, uh, Nazarites, all of that existed in Igbo culture, and that root word definitely is connects to all of them. Nze or Eze. Uh, I had another. Can you restate your comment? Because I had another your question. I had another comment.
Right. So what I'm essentially saying in this part of our conversation is that there needs to be a focus on scholars that have a specialty in linguistics and etymology to really examine the names that are coined to describe Igbo way of life, Igbo title, and even Igbo traditions, because I believe in examining and investigating the linguistics, we'd further be able to show anthropologically the relationship
Yeah.
between the Igbo and the Hebrews in the Bible.
Yes, that's what. Now I remember what I was going to say. There's a sister. First name is Chi. Don't know her last name. Zarabi Remy is very familiar with her. She is doing excellent work on connecting Igbo and Hebrew every day. Just there's more. And Zarabi Remy has an upcoming book on that subject, exactly and Hebrew and Igbo language.
Mhm.
So y'all look out for that. That's coming out soon. But yes, that is linguistics is an African tradition. It brings to mind Sheikh Anta Diop, who based his most well-known work, The African Origins of Civilization.
Right.
Before DNA or anything, he had proven through linguistics and archaeology that Africa was indeed the origin of human civilization. But he used linguistics, linking Yoruba words in West African, but in what comes to mind the most from what I remember of that book is that he was able to link a lot of Yoruba words to Egyptian words. And that also goes to the cultural differences that we can find, the distinct cultural differences that we can find when we look at linguistics, like you said. Yeah, he traced a lot of those roots right back to Egypt. So again, if there was famine, like in the time of Joseph, there was famine. Of course, Egyptians went west. Of course, some Israelites went west. We can't just look at the narrative and think that this is it. Everything is happening in a global context. You know what I mean? So they're just like when Israel was taken, they took the elite amongst the Israelites, the Assyrians. They took the elite. The poor were still left in the land. And what were they doing? And what's going on with them? You know, we have Hebrew populations that were in Elephantine and On. With the Greek name is Elephantine, the Egyptian name is On, but you have a long-standing Hebrew population there. So we have several dispersals. But you think about it, why wouldn't both Egyptians and Hebrews and any other cultural group that were in Egypt? Because remember, Egypt was a metropolis, and now think New York City. If things go bad here, we don't have food, and the economy just breaks down, we're all going to disperse, and it's not one people group. And so look at it like that. So you have people with Egyptian roots, you have people with Canaanite roots, and you have people with Hebrew roots that all end up in this fertile area of land in West Africa. And linguistics is a very good means to trace that.
Thank you for that. While we're talking about the Assyrian exile and the Assyrian captivity, and even grandiose or even grander conversation happens now, right? Here is what many people are arguing or struggle with. Seeing that the Igbo leave the Levant, they leave Eretz Israel, the land of Israel, right, before the development of works known as the Talmud, before the oral tradition is committed to the writing. Many people believe that, and I'm speaking of Jewish people now, many European Jews, they see in that the Igbo need to be retaught because they don't have the Talmud. They don't have the oral tradition expression and accounts. But what's interesting is I had a conversation with Remy Lona on my platform, and I've had conversations with him offline. And in both occurrences, things that he is saying can only be found in the oral tradition.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So the phenomena here is Igbo, as a people, as a tribe, as a culture, already have as part of their cultural motif
Yep.
things found in the oral tradition that can only be found in the oral tradition. Sister Shmone, we have to talk about that.
Yes,
We
we do.
have to talk about European Jews believing that the Igbo need to be retaught Torah because, after all, the Igbos don't have a Tanakh. Really? The Igbos have been living the Tanakh. I'll take it a step further. There are things in the oral tradition that can only be found there that the Igbo are also living. Teach us, Sister Shmone.
All right. I said something the last time I was here and I misspoke. I said it's a European paradigm where when it's written down it's law. What I meant to say is when something is written, it's truth. That's in their that construct. If once I have it on paper, it is fact. And so they're looking at Igbos through that lens, and they're looking at Judaism through that lens. So since Judaism has the books and that scribal legacy, it's more valid or more, a representation of Hebrew culture than people who are practicing Omenana who live
Come
in
on.
Eastern Nigeria. What we have to remember and understand is that the oral tradition is what our writings are all based on. First of all, the only reason they survived is because the ancestors spoke to each other. And then we have to understand the strength of that oral tradition. There's people like to use that demonstration of the telephone game, and they'll say something and someone says it to the next person, and the last person in line says something totally different from the first, and they say, yeah, that's why oral traditions and saying things verbally isn't really a valid means of preserving history, knowledge, information, etc. But not so. You have culture. It's a very African way, and it's the original way of us transferring knowledge. I'm reading something right now. There's an anthropologist called Marimba Ani, and she said something great. She was referring to how the Greeks encountered Egyptian religion, and by the time the Greeks came, it was written down, and they were able to take it and run with it. But what she said was the whole idea of the secrecy and the power of the tradition was that it was oral, that you had to sit up under somebody, you had to learn, and to get that transference of knowledge. Once you write something down, the act of writing it down itself is a corruption. It fits that tradition in time, and someone can take it completely out of context. Someone, and this is what we saw with Greek culture coming in contact with Egyptian culture, and they ran with it. The names changed, the essence of the gods that they were trying, in the precepts that they were trying to preserve in Egyptian culture, became something completely different because those stories and those ideas were written down. I could take it and make it my own. We see that in hermeneutics right now. It's there, it's written, and those of us who don't engage with the Gemara, who don't engage with the Talmudic writings, where rabbis were actually wrestling with the text, we read it and then we want to interpret it out of context. Excuse me, we interpret it in a box out of context, right in the written word, instead of seeing it in the actual world in which those ideas exist, and seeing and understanding how does that play out in real life. Igbos have not only preserved the Torah and the Talmud, but they also, their own Talmud is what I'm saying. They're all oral history, but they also demonstrate through Omenana how we practice. And that's priceless. You're not going to understand Torah like the example I gave last time. You're not going to fully understand it until you understand it through the lens of Omenana.
You know, I want to say something that I think is going to really, really move people in a way that will strike a responsive chord and force us to rethink things a bit. Okay. Um, I'm going to share something on the screen that I think will really, really aid us in understanding how hmm, how vast Hebrew words are. Um, I'm going to do that after this commercial break. So we're going to take a quick commercial and we'll be right back. I'm going to ask the family to thumb up the video, share the live stream. Don't forget to donate to the platform. Family, we will be right back.
Shalom and welcome to Zion Flex TV. Be sure to like the video, subscribe, and share the live stream. Become a member of Zion Lex TV and unlock several hidden features and hidden videos. Also, you can donate to Zion Lex TV at Cash App $ZionLex or via PayPal at zionlex@gmail.com. We also have an online academy entitled Learn Torah Hebrew Academy. Visit us on patreon.com/learntorah. Our Gold tier membership gives you unlimited access to our special event lectures and our special live movie nights. Our Platinum tier gives you unlimited access to our Torah class, Kabbalah class, Patriarchs and Matriarchs of the Covenant classes, as well as understanding the New Testament via the Oral Tradition class. Our Diamond tier gives you unlimited access to all of the previous tiers, as well as our most sought-after class, our Biblical Hebrew course. And finally, our highest tier, our Sapphire tier, gives you unlimited access to all previous tiers, as well as our highly esteemed rabbinical course. Be sure to sign up today and check your tier membership so as to ensure you're getting access to the classes you desire. Thank you for visiting us here at Zion Lex TV, and now back to our current live stream.
All right. On that note, Sister Shmone, here's the next thing that I want to say based on our conversation. So we're already talking about right now the idea and fact that the Igbo were able to perform all of the written Torah without the aid of a book. That's monumental. And they are performing the oral tradition without the form of what people regard the oral tradition to be transmitted through: the Gemara, the Talmud, the Mishnah. The Igbo have none of the above, but they follow many that's found in it, many thinking and ideology that's in there. They have it. They do it. It's Omenana. So I say this, right? In the Tanakh, it says in Genesis 26, verses 4 through 5, because Abraham obeyed my voice and kept my law, my statutes, my judgments, and my decrees. If anyone didn't know, there are 5 things listed there. That perfectly corresponds to what is called in the oral tradition the 5 classifications of Torah. In other words, the Torah can be classified in 5 main ways, right? Like we have the judgments, we have the decrees, we have the laws, we have the statutes, right? The Torah has 5 classifications. All 5 are mentioned with regard to Abraham. But what's significant there? Abraham doesn't have a book. Abraham kept the entire Torah from Aleph to Tav without a book. For Abraham, Torah was Omenana. In fact, if I may quote Rabbi Yehonatan Elazar de Mota, who visited Igbo land, he says the Igbo practices in Igbo land are the closest to what the rabbis and sages are saying is what Father Abraham kept long before Moses gave us the written law. So he said, look no further than toward the Igbo to find how Abraham lived the Torah. That is a remarkable statement.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on that?
let me I'll just make it give an example of the strength of the unifying power of looking at Omenala as our Hebraic standard of conduct, of religion, etc. Because, and I am going to be honest, before I really engaged with Zarabi Remy in conversation, and I had, like a lot of Israelites, some doubts about the origins of our European brothers and sisters,
Yes.
and their connection to the land and the culture.
Yes.
But it was just that, the fact that you see certain practices in Omenana and in European culture, as the huppah, which is one
Mm-hmm.
under which we get married. That's just one example. But the others that you see them practice, as well as Igbos. And that tells us that, okay, there was a convergence at some point. And for me, that really resolved that in my mind, in my heart, of the those of European descent, our brothers and sisters of European descent, because they are practicing those same things that we see in Omenala. And that's kind of the unifying factor. I think once 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 Jews in general, the Jewish world, engages with Omenana and sees Torah, their traditions, and the traditions of others, through that lens, we'll really have a more common and unified understanding of who we are as a people. I think it was yesterday you had a video, and there was like a debate between the Sephardim and Ashkenazi,
Yes.
and so that very thing is what I'm talking about. If the Jewish world as a whole looked at the totality of our practices and our culture through Omenala, we would all see ourselves in it, because it's all
Mm.
there. And
Mm.
you know, what more can I say than that? But
Yes.
we also see where the convergences are too. We can also, because if you don't see it in Omenala, then you can say, okay, that probably came from our stay in Babylon. That probably came from our neighbors in Eastern Europe, or that probably came from our neighbors in West Africa, etc. But you need Omenala to be that sieve, kind of, to filter everything through.
Yes. Yes. I want to say something else, right? Again, harping on the point and idea and notion that the Igbo are a living embodiment of Torah. The
Right.
goal is not to be able to open the Torah and find everything we're looking for. The goal is not to memorize everything in the Torah. The goal of Torah, right, is to unite us with Hashem, unite us with the Creator, and the modality through which that is produced is by becoming a living embodiment of it. The rabbi says every righteous Jew, every Zadik, is a Torah scroll. What are they saying? A true Zadik, a true righteous person, should be a living embodiment of Torah. Isn't that what we're coming to find out about Igbo tradition?
It's written on the heart.
Because European Jewry have to go into the Tanakh to quantify and qualify what Torah is. For the Igbo, that's an everyday lifestyle and practice. I can tell you what I did this morning. That's Torah. I can tell you what I did last night. That's Torah. I can tell you what I'm doing now. That's Torah. And I don't have a book. So I'm going to say something in this moment that I think the community may enjoy. And I'm going to say it by sharing my screen for a moment. In Genesis 5, verse 1, it says, "This is the book of the genealogy of Adam. In the day that God created man, in the likeness of God, he made him. So, in reading this verse, in a simple sense, it says, this is the book of the genealogy or the generations of man.
Mm.
Anybody ever came across that book? There is no book in the Torah called the book of the genealogy of Adam. Where is that? You see, what a lot of us who don't study Hebrew may or may not know is that the term sefer, translated as book, is also not a monolithic word. It's nuanced. It has a lot of meanings. Don't you know, Sister Shmone, the word sefer can even refer to things that are just communicated orally?
I did not
Watch,
know.
watch this. We're going to click on the Strong's number for the word sefer, which is 56 and 12. And look what it says. I'm going to blow it up nice so everybody could see it. Sefer, word origin, it means to count, recount, relate, and declare. Sister Shmone, I ask you a question. Is it possible to relate something without using a book? Her screen stopped for a moment. There was a pause. Um, I'm going to just give her a couple of moments, everybody. This is where things are heating up. I'm going to give her a couple of moments to reset. There's a pause on her screen. She probably has to fix her connection. But this is an extremely powerful live stream. I'm not even going to continue with my train of thought until she returns. But in the meantime, I will say to the community, thumb up the video and share the live stream because we are heating up. We are at that point in our conversation where I'm really going to dig into those more controversial questions. So if you weren't all the way tapped into this live stream already, I'm going to tell you right now, you better get all the way in. Don't miss a beat. We'll be right back. Hopefully her connection is fixed by then. All right. Thumb up the video, everybody. Share the live stream. Don't be afraid to donate. Show your love. We'll be right back.
I was personally very amazed by your level. I was not judgmental at all. I did not knew. But what I've seen today in many yeshiva that I put my legs where I went through, many are not at your level at all. And I will really say to all the people who study under you to believe that they have a real master. Because the way you receive us, the way you explain the Torah, the fire you bring through your explanation, it's like a stamp on the fact that you are a real one, a real sages. It will be my honor to share, to talk more about Learn Torah Hebrew Academy.
All right, all right. We are back. Our sister is back.
Sorry about that. I
And
don't know what
that's
happened.
fine. That's okay. So I'm going to go back to the share screen for a moment just to kind of reset. So what we were talking about is the nuanced nature of the Hebrew word for book, which is sefer,
Mhm.
right? Sefer. Sefer is not just referring to a physical book. A sefer in biblical Hebrew can relate to the telling of something, not just through writing, but through speech. So at times we encounter the word sefer in the Hebrew Bible, and most of the time it refers to recording something or writing something in a book. However, there are times in the Hebrew Bible where there's a record of something that's given that's only given via speech, i.e., oral tradition. So watch this. This is going to be powerful. Genesis 5:1 talks about the sefer of the genealogy of Adam. Sister Shmone, don't you know what the oral tradition refers this to? The oral tradition makes it clear that this sefer that becomes the book of Adam, it was not a physical book at all.
Mm.
This is the oral tradition of the story and genealogy of Adam that was transmitted through the ages. But it uses the term in Hebrew sefer to describe it because sefer, yes, can be describing writing and recording, but it can also describe telling a story orally. Where that becomes important now is in Igbo tradition. Igbo have a viable oral tradition that is so accurate that it literally mirrors things we're seeing in the Torah. Everything we're seeing in the Torah, it mirrors. And then I want to say, in some cases, Remy Ilona was able to show me that Igbo tradition gave more clarity.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You have things just last Shabbat, and the portion talked about Rebecca and her damsels. Uh, there's an Igbo tradition. Her damsels went with her, and so we think that just means, oh, some young ladies went along with her. But in the Igbo tradition, there's something called Idu Ulo or Idu Uno, and that has to do with when a woman is getting married, all the women, mothers, etc., give her gifts, and they load her up with everything that she will need to start her new life as a wife. And so when it said Rebecca and her damsels, the damsels went along with Rebecca, this is what it's referring to. They set her up for her new life as a wife. And so these are things that happen not only when you read Igbos in Israel, you see a lot delineated there, but every Shabbat when we study Torah through the lens of Omenana, new information comes up because you have people from different regions of Igbo land, and people of different ages, and we're reading the portion, and they can identify, wow, I saw this growing up, I remember that, this is the name for this. And so yeah, we're just beginning. This is it's very exciting
Yeah, it's
to see
very
ourselves
exciting.
in Torah.
Very. I'm going to bring this to a close. We're going to close with just one more question for you because I want to preserve you and our interaction because I want to bring you back again next week to develop this conversation even more. And I may have some of your peers from Omenana Defenders join us as well. So, in closing, the very last question that I have for you is this. In looking at Igbo tradition and cultural expression as we have it today, what do you think is possibly, as far as you know, the single most effective Igbo cultural expression that Afro Americans and Afro Caribbeans of the diaspora can benefit from?
Marriage and family, hands down. Igbo traditions are the traditions in Omenala around marriage is what we need. Child rearing, and the other one is the economic system. Igbat, I want to say it right. My goodness. It's the Igbo apprenticeship system, Igba Odibo, wherein someone who is so say you have a business, you're a successful person, there's someone in the community, a family member, etc., that is maybe poor, of a different economic standing. A young man from this poor family would go serve and work under this individual and basically be trained in a trade, in a skill. And then after 7 years, they would be set up to start their own business. This is the economic system that got Igbos back on their feet after the Biafran War, also known as the Nigerian Civil War. So this economic system is something we could use today. I mean, TED Talks have been done about it. Harvard business articles have been written about it, how successful it is. And that's something we need in our community. And the other one is marriage and family, because Igbo culture has high regard for women. And among us Hebrew Israelites.
Can you stop for a second?
Mm-hmm.
I'm well aware that even you know that the conscious community I say that very loosely. They seem to think that the Bible has a very shallow way of thinking when it comes to women, which anyone who reads the Bible, we almost want to ask, well, what Bible have you been reading when you formed that opinion? Saying that, seeing that Igbo tradition and culture is reflective of what we see in the Torah, how can it possibly and imaginably even be conceived that a person would think that the Bible, its tradition, its culture, and its laws don't stand the purpose of protecting women, uplifting women, praising women, right? Dare I say, the Creator says of Hawa, Eve, that she should be man's Nezer Chanegdo, Ezer Chanegdo, right? Where the term Ezer, and I don't care who gets offended when I say this, Ezer means a deliverer. God himself surnames himself in 1 Samuel chapter 7 verse 12. He says to Samuel, erect a stone pillar and you are to call it Even Ezer, because it is here that I delivered and saved the children of Israel from the hand of the Philistines. The Creator calls himself a Ezer because he saved us, he delivered us. He was our Moshienu, our Savior. So isn't that the title that was given to the first woman?
Absolutely.
She was a deliverer and a savior to man. How can a culture that regards women as having the ability to deliver and save man as a savior, how could that culture could even remotely be conceived of as a culture that doesn't hold women to a high threshold and standard? So I say that now because you just said Igbo culture holds women to the highest standard. Please do continue.
Of protection, and I want to say that it's not a culture where I'm not talking about feminism.
Right.
I'm talking about even the practices around Nita is sensitive to who we are as women. For another woman to come and serve and cook in your house, and you being able to take that time. We're in a Western culture where productivity is paramount. You're working, you're on your feet, you could be 9 months pregnant, you could be on NITA, etc. Any woman knows. If we could just have a break during that time, most of us, if we could have a break during that time, you know what I mean? And Omenana provides for that. It goes beyond Torah, like you said. It goes beyond, okay, not having relations with your spouse during that time, but also sanctifying that time as a time of rest and reset for the woman. And so that's what I mean. It has respect for everyone's role. Women are only a woman can initiate divorce. It's not in Omenana. It's not that a man could just write a writ of divorce. It's the woman who would do it.
Right.
Women receive inheritance, and in Omenana, you're given land. When you're married, you're also given land. You're not just marrying this person, and that goes to one of the first things that I really noticed when I was engaging with the text with Zarabi Alona's text was like, wow. We're in the West, and a lot of Israelites we're practicing forms of polygyny, and we're doing it without any context, any understanding of how that should look. And I'm not on one side or the other to say that monogamy only or polygyny only. I'm saying to rebuild our culture, we need all these options open to us.
Come on.
Because in Omenana, there was in Igbo land, there was no prostitution before the Europeans came. Widows are taken care of. People who widows are taken care of, and plural marriage satisfied. It wasn't just about satisfying physical desires, etc., or being some expression of the man's wealth. It's really about making sure every woman is taken care of. and honoring her position. And so, we sexualize everything in our, in this, the time that we live in, the world that we live in. But a lot of times it's just about that woman having a home, being covered and being protected. And that is what we find in Omenala. And I think that, yeah, our Israelite communities would really do well to seek out Omenana for the understanding of how to live in families, how to repair broken families, how to cover single mothers, how to make sure children are raised under the shelter of a strong family, etc. I could go on, but yeah, family and economics.
All right. All right. Thank you so much, Shmone, for joining me as I reached out to you immediately. All right. What I said to you behind closed doors, I'll say to you now publicly. I was immediately intrigued by your contribution in the conversation that we had last week with our Igbo elders. And I immediately asked you, would you return to have a one-on-one conversation? You acquiesced, you did, and here we are. And this conversation is monumental. It is going down in history. It is absolutely going down in history. And it's something that people are already talking about right now on social media, as my name is being tagged in this video right now by several people saying, watch this video.
Nice.
So I say that to say to you that I can't wait to have you on again, maybe as soon as next week. And I say to our elder, Eze Remy Ilona, that I can't wait to have you too, because he commented on one of the videos where I'm tagged, and he said that he would be joining. He'd be willing to join. It just so happens that I'm just now seeing it, so he's unable to join so late because we're about to cut off. So I'll be reaching out to you, Elder Remy, so that you can join us this week. It's been a long time since I had the opportunity to interview you. I can't wait to have you back on. Maybe I can have you back on tomorrow. We'll talk about it behind the scenes, but certainly next week when I have Sister Shmone return, hopefully if she can return next week, I would like to have our elder Remy Ilona with us as well. So can you please give our community any closing words at all? And then we'll officially be done.
I just want to, even the conversation you were having yesterday with Rav Mordecai about our practices being culturally relevant. I'll just take that. Omenala is a step towards that. Like I said before, when you engage with Omenala, when you read these books, I would start with Igbos in Israel. I would start with dissecting the Osu institution right here. You showed that before, and others. You're going to encounter something that is very familiar, a very familiar interpretation of Torah and how to live it out. And so I would just encourage anyone to just seek out those books, and also join us on our Shabbat Zooms. You can find the link in any of our on our Facebooks. Every Shabbat someone is posting it, or reach out to us on omenanadefenders.org and get on the mailing list.
Thank you so very much for your time, for your contribution, and I look forward to having you rejoin us. So I say to you at this moment, I say Shavua Tov to you. Have a great week, and I certainly hope to have you back on. Before you go, I'm going to ask our community, can we support our sister? So can you just take a link to your Cash App and put it in our private chat so I can post it in the live chat for everyone to see? Because with all that you've shared and contributed, it's only right that our community should support. I typically ask of this of every profound speaker that we have, and you certainly are worthy. So I cannot close.
The opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you. Take your time. In the meantime, everyone, please be sure to show your sister some love. Show our sister some love for her contribution, guys. Reach deep within your pockets and, bless her. Show her some love. When you have people that do this from the heart and they're not doing this because it's a paycheck, that's a different level of commitment. She's not expecting. She didn't ask. In fact, I'm almost positive that her humility is such that she wouldn't even ask. But I'm going to say it for her. We read in the Torah, let another man praise you and not yourself. So we know about the humility of man, and we also know about the calling of man. But I'm going to once again ask that the community support our sister. So even those of you who are not watching live, but those of you who will be catching this when you replay it, be sure to send her your support financially. On that note, Sister Shmone, thank you so very much for coming. And Zion Lex TV, we're out. Shalom.
Shalom. Torah.
All right. Torah.
Shalom and welcome to Zion Lex TV. Please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to Zion Lex TV, and remember to hit the notification bell so that you'll be alerted and notified when we are live streaming content. Also, to become a member of our online academy, Learn Torah Hebrew Academy, go to patreon.com/learntorah and select the tier membership that gives you the educational benefits that you desire.
Mention ain't my comb, mention ain't my sound. Yeah. Hey, catch me on Yafo eating waffles that I got from Coffee Bean with a tall glass of orange juice while I'm waiting on this seam. Gotta hit the studio, gotta say a bracha krona before I leave. Baruch Ata Hashem, Elokeinu Melech Haolam. Borei Nefesh Shot Rabo Veshwanan HaKol. Meshber Talachayot, Beckham Nefesh Kol Hai, Baruch Hai Ha'olamim. Shout out to Hashem, I'm living my dreams. City of gold is the land of kings. Family in Ashdod and Modin. Spend Shabbats in Renana, even in Tel Aviv. But ain't nothing like walking down them Yerushalmi streets. From the Kotel to Nachlo, from Rahavia to Baka. From Talpio to Katamon, all the way to Maladao. Meshanei Makom, Meshanei Mazal. Yehirat Zom Milfanecha. Meshanei Makom, Meshanei Mazal. Yehirat Zom Milfanecha. Ani Po, Ani Po, Ani Po, Ani Po. Ani Yerushalayim, Ani Po, Ani Po, Ani Po, Ani Po. Ani Yerushalayim.
Iraq, the shaman of the holy city made a go. Full of fire of the Holy One, I can feel it in my soul. There ain't another place in this world that can compare with you hardly. And every time I breathe in your air, I just feel a little more godly. What Emes Kedusha Tahara, the Chesed and Rahman Asanas, to stand before you Shekhinah. How can we deserve such an honor? Shalosh Rock, lion flying. What you need, yes we have it. Ever been here for sukkahs? Tell you it's a different planet. I thank you Hashem for my rabbi. I thank you for all the tzaddikim. The Kodesh Kedoshim await you. Return for us we're reaching. I thank you Hashem for my rabbi. I thank you for all the tzaddikim. The Kodesh Kedoshim await you. Return to us we're reaching.
Meshanei Makom, Meshanei Mazal. Yehirat Zom Milfanecha. Meshanei Makom, Meshanei Mazal. Yehirat Zom Milfanecha. Ani Po, Ani Po, Ani Po, Ani Po. Ani Yerushalayim, Ani Po, Ani Po, Ani Po, Ani Po. Ani Yerushalayim. Tearing down idols and we cutting down posts. We calling back Israel to the hell we know. Throwing out crystals, we don't need these stones. And we ain't no God, that's a job for y'all. All praise to the Most High. All praise to the Most High, Yahuwah. All praise to the Most High. All praise to the Yah Israel. Tearing down idols, we cutting down poles. We calling back Israel to the hell we know. We throwing out crystals, yeah. We don't need these stones. We ain't no God, that's a job for let your word be forsaken. Even if we're hated, even if we're hated,
We won't go the way of the pagans.
we don't need no
We don't need no popes to save us.
we won't let your
We
word.
won't let your word
No, 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 even
even if we're
we won't go the way. We don't need no poses or singers. We won't let your word be forsaken. Even if we're even if we're tearing down idols and we cutting down poles. We're calling back Israel to the El we know. We throwing out crystals. We don't need these stones. And we ain't no gods. That's a job for y'all. Everybody help me say all praise.